You bud. Except Sad Shy Girl. Colby. Welcome everybody. Simulation Talk 71. We're getting up there slowly on daily. How are you? What's up, George? We're gonna wait for a few more people to show up. Beep Bop. Trying to use the laser or a laser. Laser pointer is not gonna work, you know that, right? Is that Shy Girl? Deanna. Did you use a diffracted laser or just a laser pointer? Jessica. Yeah, I know, the laser pointer does not work. I'm talking about that even in my first video. That's actually a very interesting data point, that laser pointers don't work. It has to be diffracted. And you have to be on the molecule. Was the molecule involved? Egg day. What's up, Zaddy? Katie Mernhead. Hello, Brent. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, I would love to know more about it, but yeah, definitely a laser pointer is not supposed to work. Tried it. And it's kind of interesting, to be quite honest. Welcome to all the newcomers. You wasn't a molecule, yeah. Yeah, so you have to use diffracted laser. If you go to codeofreality.com, you have a full list of what you can get on Amazon. Shouldn't be that expensive, should be relatively cheap. Thank you, King 14. What's up, Sydney? Welcome, welcome, everybody. There we go. Nice. Have others been able to replicate it? Yeah, there's over 1,000 replications. This is why this is a thing. It actually works 100% of the time, basically. But you can't use a laser pointer. It's not going to work. So if you go to codeofreality.com, you have a page with the full list of what you can get on Amazon. You just need a laser with a diffraction pattern. And you got to make sure that it's not more than 5 milliwatts, just so you can kind of sit with it. And there's a full protocol as well, so you can just follow the protocol. And this is when my brain is getting tired. I gotta try and go back to my regular streaming hours. This is becoming... any surface. Have you watched any of my videos on the subject, like with the demonstrations and everything? 1 second. Welcome to all the newcomers. Okay, yeah, so you pointed at any surface. If you want specifics, you can always email me to lasersimulationx@gmail.com, and I can walk you through some of the details. But the protocol on codeofreality.com. Oh, you went to Amazon? Okay. Wait, so you went to Amazon and you got the laser pointer? So let me just introduce the channel for 1 second. Then we'll continue here. So everybody, welcome on TikTok, on YouTube, on Twitch, and on X. This channel mostly revolves around the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I'm claiming to have found actual proof that we live in a simulation. A few years ago, I discovered that if you project a diffracted laser on a surface and you will ingest a particular molecule that I cannot really name here, God loves you too, you will see code running in surfaces. This has now been replicated over 1,000 times worldwide. It's extremely coherent, and you can talk about it just like you can talk about any physical object. I'm now in contact with some of the leading researchers in the field. They don't all agree with me with my conclusions, but we can talk about the details as to why I'm convinced that that's what it means and not anything else. If you're interested in more broad content of what you see here on TikTok, you can always find me on YouTube with longer forms video. It's Dango Thoughts, DANGO Thoughts, or you can just follow my link tree up here. And we meet here every single day to discuss the discovery, the implications, the experiment itself, as well as science, religion, spirituality, philosophy, God, whatever comes to mind. And we're here every single day. So, all that being said, let's dive right in. Why do you need to be on a molecule? I don't know. Something tells me that it has something to do with allowing you to see more frames per second of reality itself. But the short answer is I'm not sure. What's up, Rico? So does manifesting also work with this? Not as far as I know, no. So it's at the moment it doesn't seem like there's any utility as far as personal gain or anything like that. But it is quite interesting, I'll tell you that. It's a simulation or purgatory as they try to recreate God. I don't know, man. I think the world is pretty awesome. I wouldn't imagine purgatory to be this awesome. What is free will if we can't help what we desire? Free will doesn't exist no matter what the circumstances are, because you would have to describe a world in which every single conscious unit is somehow outside of existence, making choices that could have been otherwise, and that's simply an incoherent view of any structure. So there's a manifest. Oh, yeah, we read that. What's your golden rule for manifesting? Don't know. I think my spiel on that whole thing is a little different. I feel like people are a little bit overshooting the mark there. It's not a matter of think. It's not possible to describe a world in which that's possible, because you would literally have to describe somehow a state of affairs in which the thing you feel yourself to be is somehow sitting outside of reality on some very comfortable couch, maybe multi-dimensional couch, but somehow you're making a decision about what's going to happen next that could have been otherwise, and that's not a logical thing. See what I mean? So you have a perceived story of why you think you make your choices, but you're definitely not responsible for them. That would be my contention. Free decision we have, the consequences we can't choose. Well, okay. This is an example that Tim Harris gives in one of his talks, right? Think of a city, any city. Do you have a city? Did you think of a city? What if we are creating the world that we're currently in with the code? So again, these thoughts, I can understand why people gravitate towards them, but yesterday we talked about it quite a bit actually, and you can demonstrate to yourself that you're not fully, at least not fully creating the world, because you can't walk through walls and you can't fly, right? So these things tell you that there's also some structure that, at least for the moment, doesn't really care what you want. It's just what it is. Now, I don't know why that is, but it's very common now to kind of ignore this and say we're creating our reality. And of course, you are co-creating your reality with the rest of what's going on, but you're not solely creating your reality, right? Again, can walk through walls, can fly. So these things are still true. And it's not a small detail, it's a major, major detail. And I feel like people are overlooking that. So if the idea is that you can just create whatever you want, maybe, but you can't create anything you want in any period of time. Some things take time, and that is part of the equation, right? It's not just the fact that it's going to happen someday. If it's going to happen after a period of time that doesn't really matter to you because you're not going to be around, then it doesn't really matter, right? The whole point of something is that you can actually experience it. So then, if you are manifesting something, it has to do with how well aligned your state of being is with the rest of what's going on. The insistence that it's otherwise, I feel, is some people might think it's a positive way of seeing the world, but I think any delusional way of seeing the world is not a good thing. So that's why I fall on that. What's my relationship with the word God? Once again, yesterday we kind of covered this subject quite a bit, so today I might not be diving too deeply into it. But in general, I think there is such a thing. However, what most people mean by it, even when they say it, I don't think that's it. Yesterday I had this we're talking about it quite a bit, and what I said was, if you would actually be referring to the thing that you think you call God, your soul would not allow you to open your mouth to say the word. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but there's a certain level of purity that if your being would truly be aiming towards that thing when you said it, you physically wouldn't be able to say it. So when you say God, what you think you mean is not what it actually is. That's how I perceive the word God. You're thinking of a city? Well, said shy girl. Your reality is my reality, right? This idea that we all have a completely separate reality is, of course, completely nonsensical, because we share a space, right? We might have different perceptions of reality, but the reality is the reality. Even in terms of the most spiritual outlook you can take of the world, there's still some structure that holds everything together, including the different perceptions of everything. Even if they influence the possibilities of even the laws of physics, you still are buffered in a certain time frame that binds us by certain regulations. The pretending that that's not the case is nothing else but pretending, right? Again, simple. Can you walk through a wall? Can you walk through a wall? No. So something is preventing you from walking through the wall, even no matter how much you want that, right? That's my point. So if you're thinking of a city, whatever the city was, you actually can take credit for what it was. If you pay close attention to what it's like to be you while you're picking the city, what really happens is that I said pick a city, and then your brain just suggests cities. Yeah. Now, the thing you feel yourself to be, the thing that is appropriating your motion, the thing that you are moving your hand, right? That thing is not doing that. It just happens. It's kind of equivalent to me saying the cities for you. I'll be like New York, Las Vegas, and then it's like all together, right? So, first of all, there's a lot of names of cities that you know that just never came in that moment. So why? Now, you might have a story as to why, but you would be guaranteed to be wrong about why that is. You have no idea why. It's something happens in the networks, and it's completely impossible for you to know exactly what's going on in the brain when that happens. And then there's suggestions of cities, right? That process is not under the control of the thing you call you. It just happens. It's just like your heart pumps itself, your thoughts think themselves. You, if you want to call anything a choice, is you just kind of like this observer. They're just kind of looking at things, right? And if you're going to stay long enough on a thing, then that thing that you stayed long enough on, it starts becoming more real. There's an interaction with it. First as a thought, then as an emotion, then you might act on it. So you might do something, you might go somewhere, you might build something, you might call someone. There's an action that precedes that attentional span of yours, right? That, what I'm saying is that even pointing your attention at a thing, at a thought or whatever it was, if you really, really pay attention, even that is not under the control of the thing you call you. It just kind of happens. It is true that we have the perception that something happens, and then we, as a, this agent in the world, we feel like, oh, I made that choice. But you have to think about what you're actually saying. You're saying that you made that choice, and if you just would do something else, it would be a different choice. But the truth is that you can't do anything else but exactly how it happened, and it is exactly the same as things just happening, right? So it's still worth talking about things that seem to be under the control of the thing that the I or the self agrees with. In other words, you do know the difference between moving your hand and your hand twitching, right? There's some kind of a difference there. It's like you're really not doing that, because even the self is like, where is this coming from? I'm not willing it to happen. But I'm claiming, and this is obviously this train of thought is not originating with me. This is thought about for a few millennia by philosophers. But if you really pay close attention to what's happening there, the only thing you can truly say about these moments where you feel like you make the choice is that what you feel yourself as the central agent to be, you're in some agreement with this now should be happening. There's some kind of a prediction of yours about this happening, and then it is happening, and this preceding prediction to the action is what you call your choice. But it's no more your actual choice than everything else that is happening in the universe, because it came out of a moment that preceded by everything else that happened in the universe, including the prior state of yourself sitting there doing nothing, and all of a sudden you're doing this and having the thought of, I feel like I want to move my hand. If you really look at it, it's like, how is this happening? Like, how are you doing this? You have no idea. You're not the nerves. You're just like, I don't know, I'm willing it to exist. So I guess you can say you manifested moving your hand. Sure. But the honest thing is that you have no idea how this happens. And that's why describing a world in which you're truly a free agent that is just running around and can do whatever, somehow decoupled from reality, is not a coherent way of looking at it. And in fact, it's quite liberating the second you understand that. I know it might sound like it's doing the opposite, but no, you kind of removes if you know things will just occur, being okay with whatever happens and trying to occupy a state that is in flow with everything else. I think it's also what is actually meant by the way of the Tao. Where things flow is when you knock down the delusion that you're somehow separate from the world enough to realize that you are that flow of the universe doing the thing. So things seem to be more in line with what you want because you are getting more in line with what the universe is doing, not the other way around. Does that make sense? Let's go through some of the comments. Also, welcome to everybody. I don't know if it's on YouTube, Twitch, or X, or all of the above, but welcome everybody. What's up, Matthew Savage? Good to see you, man. Let's see. Oh, man. TikTok is killing me with these. Okay, let's see. And we're all a byproduct of our circumstances, including our way of thinking. Yes, I would agree with that, Markel. What's up, Tulsa? Nice. Oh, that's the city you thought about. I highly recommend everybody watch Sam Harris' Free Will. he has a few lectures before he wrote the book, and I think there's nobody that argues for that case better than him. Now, it is the case, even he said that he finds that sometimes it kind of destabilizes people. Not sure why, but I'm not knocking anybody down for that. If you do feel that it somehow takes something away from you, in a way that disturbs you psychologically, definitely don't engage with it. You should be happy. If any, idea destabilizes you psychologically, you shouldn't engage with it. God designed all things to have purpose. All right. Do thoughts and energy have particles? That's actually a great question, Bobby. I have an interview with somebody on my channel on YouTube. There's some clips here on TikTok and on Instagram, but there's the full talk is on YouTube on Dango Thoughts. You can follow the link tree in my profile, or just search for Dango Thoughts, DANGO Thoughts, on YouTube. And Daniel Boyd is the researcher who postulates that information has actual particles, just like subatomic particles. Interesting frame. We actually, that talk was a lot of fun because I traveled all the way to the Netherlands to meet him, and we sat down in this church that was converted to a bar, which was awesome. A very Dutch thing to do. It was a 600-year-old church, and very beautiful. We were sitting in there. Is the idea of reality? Jess, how are you? Good to see you. Thank you for being part of the team. Is the idea of reality an illusion, or the fact of knowing God is real and it's not an illusion? So I think the word illusion can't. The one thing it can never refer to is experience. Reality, you can't also refer to it with the word illusion ever, because it's a definition thing. It's not a matter of opinion or what is meant by reality, or what should only be meant by reality is what in fact exists. And it doesn't mean that it's necessarily what we think it is right now. It's just what reality really is, what exists, period. Okay? Whatever it is. If it's just mind, if it's just God dreaming himself or herself through all of our perspectives, go as wild as you want, that would be reality. Okay? And God would be included in it, by the way. Because it's reality, right? Now, to say that reality is an illusion is simply to define something and then say it's not what I defined. It doesn't make any sense. Experience can also not have ever the word illusion attached to it, by the way, even though I know a lot of cultures believe it's Maya. So you can say that this is not the fundamental thing, sure, but it's not an illusion. It is an experience you're having, no matter how it arises. And as long as there's any experience or any agent experiencing it, it can't, by definition, it cannot be an illusion. It is the experience. So, obviously, without unpacking this premise philosophically would basically eliminate the need for the movie The Matrix, because then the reality is that the machines were actually very ethical because they just created the perfect environment for us. If they're already going to do that, at least they created a perfect environment that our brains can cope with, right? So, as long as you experience pain or love or anything, that's real. It doesn't matter if you in some computational system under the laws of physics, makes no difference. How it's being rendered makes no difference. As long as you're experiencing it, that's real. As to believing in God, I don't see how it has anything to do with knowing reality, unless you want to say that God is the fundamental thing of reality, and then you can say that by knowing God, you're aware of the most real thing there is. So in that case, I would agree with you, but at no point it becomes an illusion. There's just gradation of how fundamental or core is the thing that you're aware of or experiencing. That's in the Old Testament, an ability to say the real name of God, or the command to not do that, not the inability. But I think that's what is actually meant. It's almost like training ground to see if when you're given kind of like free reign of just being able to either align yourself with reality or not, will you utter that thing that technically, I don't know if it's the right term to use when you're talking about something like the soul, but that cannot be uttered because it's so holy that you can't to say, hey, what do you think about God? That should be kind of like, if you understand what it is, you wouldn't be willy-nilly throwing it around like that. I guess that's my feeling and understanding of it. Even worse, Woken. It's weird to think that everything broken down to its smallest particle is made of energy. Well, it's not quite true, because E equals mc squared doesn't mean everything is energy. It just means that they're equivalent. Both of them are fundamentally a deeper thing. It doesn't mean that everything is energy. It's not what it means. If you're talking about everything is basically a probability field, I guess you're getting closer, but that's not quite the same as saying it's all energy. So this reality is your reality and yours. How do you see the thing that can be possible? What do you mean? We can walk through walls, literally? Amazing. Well, you're about to break everybody's brain then. I believe it's all consciousness, one collective conscious world. Yeah, I'm all on board with that, James. You know me. Idealism, baby. You do not answer questions, only ask. Keith Peters. I don't answer questions? I feel like I do, but you can ask a specific question and tell me where I failed to answer it. Is the double set theory proof of the simulation? Proof? No, but it was actually the first thing on my mind when I started thinking about this. How can we prove if these parallel realms exist? And eventually, years down the line, it led me to the understanding that we should use a laser. But it by itself definitely doesn't prove something like that. So free will is an allusion to the movie. I don't know what that means. Sorry. How do we then expand our awareness and intention? You do it all the time. It's a natural process, I believe. In the same way that you... So I feel like information is the most fundamental thing in our pocket of reality. And then it involves itself with different possibilities and interactions according to which structures appear. So it's not that, my contention would be, it's not that your brain, that wiring was what was required to give rise to consciousness, is that information that is arranged in this particular way that also makes awareness possible, creates in a physical arrangement that looks like your brain. So your brain is actually arranged around the information and not the other way around. So is there the narrative were just unexplainable? What do you mean by that? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Thank you for all the likes, Jess. I appreciate you. Here last night, love what you found. I'm just curious if we were seeing could be us, or like 5G. Could be us or like 5G. What do you mean? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Jess. If you can clarify. How do you falsify God? You can't. You actually can't falsify anything. You can just declare things to be more or less plausible. Are you another Jesus? Yeah, definitely not. So if people believe in a God, then a God exists. Actually, that's not that far-fetched, but I think actually God is a real thing. And I think like that's it's neither here nor there. From what I see is that people either feel it or see it or experience it in some form, and then it becomes tangible for them. But I think that at any point you should always consider that whatever it is that you've experienced or convinced of can also always be false. And I think that little part is basically a no-go, obviously, for religious people, which is actually highly suspect. But also, I feel like even if you're not religious, sometimes it's hard to bring on board because it's painful. It's like, what if everything I believe is wrong? Yeah, what if everything you believe is wrong? It's just it's a healthy thought to have in your mind every once in a while. What's up with invocation paid with all this? What's in a soul? Where does it exist? No, don't know. Do you believe dreaming is a part of the simulation or the byproduct? It's a good question. I think it's just different layers of information interacting with itself. Really, I don't think it's so the proposition isn't that there's some kind of we're in a simulation and then there's base reality somewhere. Is that the world is computational at bottom, and in that context, simulation just means a slice of reality. So we're in one slice of the infinite simulation, basically. The brain is quantum, so I think it creates information. Trying to understand what. So you think that quantum is what creates information? When you saw the laser script writing, did you get a feeling along with it? It's hard to say because the feeling is the molecule, and the molecule, as you know or don't know, but it's very intense. So it's kind of hard to say. Is dying and thereafter just another part of the simulation? Yeah, simulation just goes on forever, basically. I've taken hallucinogens and got a real sense of simulation. There you go. God will come back. Where did God go? God was away? What's up? Michelle? How do you pronounce that? Sorry. And yeah, right now it sounds like we're definitely doing the more philosophical thing. I agree. It's a good try. Keep on trying. The number of languages you're seeing everywhere while talking. Taking. Could it be the 5G network around this? Oh yeah, it definitely looks like it's basically, well, it's responsible for constructing the whole thing, but also it's kind of like, you can think of it as the internet of the universe, yeah. I don't think the brain creates information. It is a receiver that creates and implements the limits. Not quite sure what you mean by the limits there, Lauren, but overall, as a general thrust behind what you're saying, I'm with you. I'm on board. Yeah, well, if something feels real, it is real. That is, by definition, what real means, is that it can occur to it can influence something else. So if you have an experience, that experience is real in whatever is happening. And because the functionality of experience is experiencing, that is real. It doesn't matter what the content is. To say that, so the idea that the simulation is somehow, the word simulation doesn't mean fake, okay? And the idea that just because something is rendered on a computer, as long as there's a conscious being in there, somehow it makes it fake, is the same thought that if particles give rise to whatever is happening here and nothing else, then it's almost like saying our experience is not real, it's all just particles, bouncing around. That's just not true. Your experience is the thing that actually gives it substance. So it is, in some way, the most real thing that you can possibly think of. How do we explain senses and physical objects in a simulation world? Not sure what the... Nick, I really don't understand quite what is the conundrum there. In the same way that even without the simulation hypothesis, your brain as an informational processing tool is the thing that gives rise to your experience. So that's the same. The only thing on the question is that the larger reality, is it made out of just physical matter, or does that physical matter also arising is also arising from a computational underpinning. It's going wild. Makes me think that these gods that came down with powers were actually admins of the simulator. What gods? Bad Bunny, that's funny. Bad Bunny is funny, John. Only being able to write a small bit hinders the ability to explain. Yeah, well, you can always go to YouTube to Dango Thoughts. You can write a lot more there. Just Dango Thoughts, 3 words. DANGO Thoughts. The limits, I mean, the definitions. You have to define what is to experience it. I don't know if you have to define something to experience it. You experience things without defining them all the time. You mean like taking a limit, like that kind of a limit? The script writing looked very similar to river script writing, don't you think? I don't know what river script writing is. Let me see. Oh, help you develop screenplays. Got it. You mean like it helps you to finalize the thought of what's possible, basically? That's a cool thought. Experience is confined by the limits, so we can take a closer look at it, like a microscope, I guess. How's that different than just saying there's regularities inside the simulation that you can call the laws of physics, and then you're bound by these? What is this? What is the subconscious mind as it relates to the simulation? Well, it's the mind at large. It's not your subconscious mind. It's just the mind, the thing that ultimately all of us are made out of. Felt to me like the fabric of reality. What are you talking about, Ben Smart? I think the answer are in Minecraft. No, the answer is 42. That's for sure. We just don't know what the question is. Gods in myths like Egyptians gods or Greek gods. Oh, you're taking them to be like actual? I'm understanding you currently simulation theory, acquired limitless processing power. Any debug menu updates? Yeah, not yet, brother. To your comment again, if you feel like correcting me, would love if you correct me. I'm not really sure how to pronounce your name, but I would assume it's Michelle. And if not, please correct me. If I'm understanding correctly, simulation theory requires limitless processing power. Not necessarily if you're allowing things to buffer only what any observer sees, just like in a video game. We already have a game, I don't remember what it's called, but somebody here can help, that can basically manifest millions of worlds, right? And we definitely don't have unlimited computational power. Now, putting conscious agents in there, that's a separate story, because we don't really know how consciousness arises, or is it fundamental. But we already have the ability to create video games that can just create millions of worlds by itself. So that by itself should tell you that it shouldn't be that difficult, especially for an advanced civilization. But also from what I'm seeing, the game is No Man's Sky. It's up First Cause. But also from what I'm seeing is that they are actually utilizing all the simulations to draw that infinite computational and actual power from. So they borrow a tiny bit of energy and a tiny bit of computation from all the layers of all the simulations. So the simulations barely notice it, but in return, they allow them to exist. So they have literally infinite computational power and infinite energies. I believe the galaxy is their city, and they are dark matter. That's what they are. They're made out of dark matter, the simulators. And also, just so you know, Michelle, this channel is actually not so much about the philosophical proposition of it, even though right now we're definitely talking about the more philosophical stuff. A few years ago, I actually discovered a way that anybody can test this. We can actually see a portion of the simulation directly, and this is why I started all these channels and started engaging with people directly. But basically, I discovered that if you project a laser, it has to be a diffracted laser. The laser pointer is not going to work. And you ingest a particular molecule that I cannot name here because of legal purposes, but if you Google the spirit molecule, you'll see what it is. You will see code, straight up code, running in surfaces everywhere, but in every surface, including your skin, which is kind of wild. So my proposition is less philosophical, more experimental, but that brought me to understand that there's actually a deep need to now talk about this stuff in a more concrete way and maybe excavate it from the philosophical trenches and bring it back to something that is more coherent and concrete. Start connecting it to things, because I know for a fact that's the case now. It requires some framing. Can I explain why children see spirits? Can I truly explain? I have no idea. My assumption would be what people assume, which is that their mind is a lot more open, so they're capable of perceiving extra information, and they're not so tethered by conceptual blindness. They're not so entrenched in what we believe is possible, and I would assume that's why they see it. Can we think of fractals in the same way we think of zeros and ones in computing? Well, it depends on the exact context. I'm not quite sure why you would do it across the board, because fractals is a very particular thing. Information, a binary code does not behave like a fractal unless you arrange it in a way that will give rise to fractal-like repetitions, but by itself, it's not a fractal. So a fractal literally means a pattern that when you repeat it, it gives rise to a larger version of itself. That's what a fractal is. The dimensional green script coding or writing, are you asking? I absolutely believe when I was a child, I felt like I could see the air, but I couldn't explain it. No, it's exactly right. And if, by the way, if you do small amounts of the molecule, not like big amounts, and you just sit there, if you really focus, kind of like you do the magic eye thing, when you kind of see the space in between the space, you'll see that the air has a kind of like a weird bulk. It's exactly what you're describing. Example we experience inside of time is a limit we use as a tool to experience. I see what you're saying. So there's three different kinds of time as far as physicists, the way that physicists see it. There's psychological time, which is your perception of time, which has a lot to do with how your brain buffers information. There's, I guess you can call it, the way we measure time, which is obviously linked to both the third one, which is physical time, and to your perception. It kind of sits in between, right? Because you have a certain perception of the physical time, and then you have to create some kind of chronological recording device that then kind of sets a certain pace to the time that you're experiencing. And then there's physical time, which is an actual dimension, or at least according to what physicists, see the world as. That's why it's called space-time. And in that sense, you're not making up the framework of time. Time actually exists. Now, it is true that some physicists will contend that, and they would say, no, time actually doesn't exist, and we're looking at it all wrong. But at least in the moment, the majority of people in the physics community accept Einstein's field equations, which include the element of a physical time. So it's not just a frame, it's an actual thing that exists. That's what we postulate. If this is a simulation, is there a chance we look like the spirits that's been seen by today's people? Wait. If this is a simulation, is there a chance we look like the spirits that's been seen by today's people? So you mean by other beings? Do we look like the spirits to them? Is that what you're asking? Are you a tarot reader or something? Yeah, definitely not. Whoops, I choked that. It's all good. Rob is saying, if we're in a video game, then what happens when the game gets taken out? So the proposition is not that we're in a video game or even in a computer, but that the world at bottom is computational, and we can talk about what it means. But in that sense, there is no base reality. Computation is the real world, and our world is just a one slice of that larger computational space. So there's no taking out the video game because it's not. Reality is that video game, all of it, like all the way to infinity. There is experience outside of time where we use the limit of time as a microscope, is what I meant. Yeah, but to be fair, Lauren, have you ever experienced that thing outside of time? I'm not talking about having like a crazy experience in psychedelics or meditation where you feel like there's no time. I'm talking, were you ever outside of reality or outside of the universe? The answer is no, right? So this is an assumption, or maybe I'm misunderstanding you, but that would definitely be an assumption. What's up? That's amazing. Good to see you. Okay, your philosophy, you're discussing philosophical, you're having a philosophical discussion. No, I'm actually telling you that if you do this one thing, you will see the reality of a portion of the simulation. I know it sounds wild, but the experiment is there. Anybody can try. You can go to codeofreality.com. There's a protocol there. It's very simple to do. Hydrogen is 93% of the universe in every square centimeter. So the universe is every square centimeter. I don't understand the comment, Ben. If you can reformulate, thank you. How did you cope with living after the laser experiment? Actually, surprisingly, it doesn't really influence much, because or at least for me it didn't. It's just that you're like, okay, well, this is crazy, but you still have to do things, right? You still have to kind of live your life. So I don't know. It doesn't do much unless it impinges on your understanding in any given moment, which it doesn't unless you do it again. So it doesn't do much. I think that it will start playing a big role when we're going to start figuring out what to do with this observation and how to utilize it for something. And then it's going to start getting into the more cultural discussion in a more serious way. Is the simulation is the simulation protection from different dimensions? No, it would include all the different dimensions. The simulation is everything there is, basically. Have I ever astral projected? No, but people tell me about it all the time. I mean, I've done the molecule a lot, and I guess you can call that astral projection. I'm not sure if it's the same thing, but you definitely go somewhere. You didn't confirm if the code looks like a river text. I don't know what a river text looks like. It looks like Japanese katakana combined with some Hebrew letters and some numbers from 0 to 5. I'm saying like because it's not exactly these things. These are the closest things that it look like. But it looks like an alien language, moving in all kinds of patterns around like 3 or 4 different axes. It rotates around these ball-like structures. They're like buckyballs. It moves in these giant columns, and it switches in one spot, like that. It's not so much an opinion. It's like literally everybody agrees on exactly what it looks like. He looks it up, but didn't look at the old images of the river script writings. Yeah, I just looked up what it is, not the images of it. You can also describe it, Oh, these images? So it kind of looks like, I guess, no, it looks nothing like that. So not like river script writing. Also not like the Alison Gray characters. I will admit, as a skeptic medical professional, I hear your explanation and feel it's more medical. Well, I understand the contention, but if you experience it for yourself, you'll see why that doesn't, why the explanation of the medical doesn't hold water. There's a lot of information you are giving that leans towards proprioceptive hallucinations. No, I understand what you're saying, but it's not, because it has too many parameters that doesn't fall under the same rubric. First of all, it has complete stable coherence in spatial coordinates that have nothing to do with your movement. So no matter where you move your head, it behaves like a regular object that has its own spatial coordinates. In order to coordinate that, your brain would have to do a lot of work to keep it in the same spot, and then also basically render it back to the position where it was supposed to be, which is something that the brain doesn't do because it requires too much energy, and the brain that never exerts unnecessary energy. Second of all, when you move the light, it's not moving with the code is not moving with the light. The light is moving across it. Once again, it behaves like it's just on its own side. The fact is that every single person, and we have now over 1,000 observations worldwide, including 15 people who were sitting in a room together and all talking about it at the same time, are all pointing to it and talking about the exact same structure. They can talk about it, they can point to it, they can describe it. But the truth is that you don't even need any of that when you experience it for yourself, when you see it, because it has what cognitive scientists call objectness. Objectness is a term used to describe the full repertoire of properties that objects have when they're actual objects in a three-dimensional space. In other words, it's the equivalent of the unfakeable bill of all the properties that an object has when it exists in a three-dimensional space. Your brain is really good at cueing what that is. So when you look at this pen, the reason that it's real, or at least you would assume it's real, is because there's the way that ambient light hits it, the way that when you rotate it, it's always coherent according to what it is, right? There's a lot of different parameters that you can measure that have to do with the realness of this thing. Now it has the added bonus that you can touch it because of electromagnetic force, so the code doesn't have that. That is true. However, everything else under the umbrella of what you would describe as objectness, the code has. It behaves exactly like a physical object would. It looks like you're looking through a microscope. Literally the same experience. You're like looking into like a parallel world that you've never seen before, and it just doing its own thing. And when you move the light, it's like you're moving the microscope lens. So when you look at all the microbes, they're doing things, but it's clear to you that they are existing on their own side and they have nothing to do with your mind making them up. Like there's something about the microbes, even though you're looking technically at a flat two-dimensional surface, there's a behavior there that is just a real thing that is there, right? And we can talk about the specifics of what it means, but the code looks like that. Only it doesn't even look two-dimensional like in a microscope. It actually is much more coherent, and you can see the three-dimensional tapestry like extends forever. There's all kinds of things happening around it. We're putting out a documentary very soon that talks about a lot of these things, and when you see people's reactions, it kind of tells you a lot as well. People are very coherent. It's not like you're not confused or bamboozled. You're sitting there and you're like, what? You can't believe what you're seeing. That is also coupled with the fact that I don't know if you ever experienced any of these, specifically the spirit molecule. I can't say the name because they will flag the chat. But that by itself already raises the question whether that space is real, which is why there's actually research going on in the world now. There's one in the Imperial College in London, there's one in San Diego, and it is not run, for example, like a lot of the psychedelic research that is happening in Johns Hopkins, in which they're asking the medical question, which is like, can it help us heal? Can it help us with addictions, things like that? No. They're asking the ontological question. They're studying this in a lab under the ontological question. Is this real? That's how real it feels that even scientists taking this seriously now. So that already is happening without the laser, without anything. What I'm claiming to have found is one of the first ways to actually probe into the objective element of it, because people do agree on some things in the space, like they talk about the same entities and things like that, but these are a little flimsy because you can always you can always interpret that in terms of archetypes. You can say, well, look, at bottom, our brains are kind of similar. We're running a very similar software at the core, and maybe there's some archetypical elements that are the same, and this is why you guys are experiencing the same beings, okay? So you can explain it that way. I would still claim that if you ever do the molecule, you will immediately understand that that's not a reasonable explanation of this. But let's say that, you don't, and I can understand if you don't, like why that would be less plausible to you. But when you see the code, it's replicable 100% of the time. That is unheard of in the space of what you would call group hallucination. And by the way, there's balloons on YouTube. You guys missed it. And by the way, that by itself should show you how often scientists basically explain away a thing they have no idea how it happens by using words like just and it's as if they know what that means. They label something. You can see it with placebo, for example. People say it's just placebo. I'm like, what is the word just doing there? Do you know how placebo works? No, you don't. You have no idea. Why is it that 80% to 33% of the time when you believe something, your body heals? Why is that? And there's literally no explanation. I used to think that there's something I don't understand about it, and then I actually went really deep into the literature and I discovered nobody knows. And yet, medical professionals and very smart people, scientists, still say the word just before the word placebo. That's crazy. In fact, there's some studies that they've done where if you amp up how radical the placebo thing is, it brings up the efficacy of placebo to about 54%. So for example, there was a heart procedure that they did in which they had a control group, and they had obviously the people who actually had the actual operation done on them in this way, in which they just opened them up and then they sewed them back up. Didn't do any procedure. And these people healed from a condition in one of their arteries leading to the heart just because they did that. So, and it went up to 54% because it's a very radical thing. It's different than just giving you a pill, right? They're cutting you up. So the more you believe something seems to actually influence the physical system. And that has no explanation, no satisfactory explanation at least. And I'm not saying it's magic. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there's a very big hubris in the medical and scientific community where they just don't understand something, and they've said they brushed it away enough decades where it just became like a mantra that they repeat. Oh, this is just placebo. I was like, yeah, you can't say just before placebo because you have no idea what happens there. So the point is that there's a lot more going on than most scientists give a credence to, and it's completely understandable in light of the fact that people do tend to exaggerate and confabulate. This is a very common and a human thing. That's absolutely true. So I understand the impulse to first assume that people are confused, because for the most part they are. It is true. However, I think that the scientific community takes this sentiment a little bit too far. And they forget that we are kind of downplaying a very large mystery here. And I'm saying that unless they've experienced these things, it's kind of like explaining color to somebody who's never seen color. It truly is the same. There's certain elements of your experience, of your qualia, that can be had if you allow for certain things to be experienced. And this is definitely one of them where, when I just came up with these videos and people went wild on Reddit in the beginning, and there was a lot of people who were trying to explain it away. And I was, being as polite as I possibly can and trying to engage with the ideas because I understand, and it's totally understandable, all this pushback. It was obvious to me that's going to happen, so I had no problem with it. However, after a little bit of back and forth, maybe not a little bit to be honest, but maybe after 50 messages back and forth, I'm seeing that we're kind of going in circles. I'm like, listen, go do it. I'm not actually arguing with you. I'm telling you what you can try to find out for yourself. I'm not here to argue with you. And that actually makes the difference between a philosophical discussion and one that has an experimental proposition on the table. A very concrete one that is repeatable, easy to do, not complicated, and anybody can verify for themselves. So yeah, I'm sure that there's going to be a million comments that, again, this always happens to me because when I go on these tangents where I just kind of missed the point of what you were saying, and it's probably even the case. But this was important for me to get off my chest, so I'm glad I did. Let me just take a couple of comments from YouTube and then I'll go back to TikTok. First card is saying, is if space and time is connected or the same thing, etc., then spaceships is also a time travel device, especially when it starts moving at a very high velocity. Well, thank you for this question, First Cause. Well, this is a very common misconception. It's not that space and time are linked, is that they are the same thing. It's not space and time, it's space-time. It's one word. And it takes a second to kind of get used to it, but when you're moving through space, you're automatically moving through time. It's not that you can't move through one and not the other. It's true that in some very radical regions of space, like, forget the name of that region inside of a black hole. Hold on, I'll find it. It's not the event horizon. Next region inside black hole after the event horizon. Horizon matter. Blah, 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 blah. No, not the singularity. Come on, man. Let's see. Because every time I get to this point, I always say I don't remember, and I should really. And I always say I'm going to look it up, and I don't, so I'm going to do it now in real time. Is known as the. Oh, I don't know why it's not saying that, but anyways, I guess it's a lesser known thing. But there's definitely a space that we theoretically identified that is separate than the singularity and the event horizon. And what it is that it, because of the tidal forces of space-time itself and the amount of force exerted on space-time, you have a, I'll find it for the next chat, you have a region of space that is literally swaps the roles of space and time. So it's kind of like the time portion of space-time starts flowing in a physical direction, which is really strange. But aside from places like these, space-time is one thing. It's a fabric, and when you're moving through it, you're automatically moving through time. So if the time in Andromeda right now, the physical time in Andromeda, which is the closest galaxy to us, is a physically different time than here, not just because it's really far away and we can't send a signal fast enough. It's literally a different time there. There's a different time, there's a different number of clock ticks that occurred there than here from the beginning of the Big Bang. Does that make sense? Different regions of space-time, different regions of space literally have different number of clock ticks, different number of ticks that happen from the beginning of space of the Big Bang, basically. So that's first of all. If you heard of, and I think that's also all of it, unless you have a follow-up question. Have you heard of D-Wave? Do you think quantum computers could help us to understand the simulation better? If I remember correctly, D-Wave is one of the first companies that created quantum computers. They're the ones that sold a few, right? There's one, they sold one to Google. I think actually one to Halliburton, or I don't remember, but they sold a few of them now. Yeah, absolutely. Quantum computers. So the world at bottom is quantum, all of it. There is nothing that is not quantum. What we see as classical physics is basically an aggregation of a lot of quantum effects combined together, which gives rise to more complex behaviors that seem, to behave like what we call physical objects, but they are all collections of a lot of quantum effects. So if you have a quantum computer, it interacts with the more fundamental thing of reality. So yes, absolutely, it will definitely change the trajectory of many, many, many things. Rob is saying we experience time differently compared to the rest of the universe. We are just not there yet. Well, it is not where. I'm not sure. Not that I believe you're disingenuous. I'm just attempting to remove most likely answer. Sure, you won't be able to, Michelle, because unless you see it, there's too many things to explain with words. You simply most of them will collapse the second you see it for yourself. My experience with showing people the experiment, myself, aside from all the people that doing the experiment themselves at this point, because there's entire subreddits and communities talk about it. Actually, I don't know if there's specific subreddits for it. I think somebody created a few, but I'm not sure. But there's definitely some chats, so I know there's like people that I don't know about, and they're doing these experiments all the time. My experience with it is that whether you were interested, whether the person was interested or skeptical, whatever they were, the second they see the code, everybody have the same reaction. Their jaw drops. Like, I've actually never seen an adult being in awe, like in true awe. I see it every time they see the code. They can't believe that this is happening. Because even the people who are on board, when they see the code, they realize in that moment that until that point, they liked the idea. They never thought they would ever actually find out. But when they did, it changes something inside of you, and you go, oh, that was for real. Oh, shit. So there's that moment, right? And that, you can't fake that. Like I have countless videos of people doing this, and unless I've hired the best actors in existence, it's unfakeable. That reaction is unfakeable. Obviously, this is not a simulation, but Google knows your brain better than you. Good. I don't know what any of this means. The Vedic text talk about the Soma net. Yes, it does. After enlightenment, carry water, chop wood type shit. Nice. That sounds wonderful, actually. The topic is the simulation theory, and I'm actually claiming that I found proof that we live in a simulation, and this is why I put out all the videos that you can see on TikTok, and you can also find them on YouTube. They're longer on YouTube with more information. Yes, plug. It's Dango Thoughts. You can just follow the link in my link tree. It's worth it. There's a lot of fun videos coming up, and also yesterday I promised that I'm gonna have 2 very fun interviews coming up soon. So definitely look out for that. I promise I'm not gonna disappoint. What else? Yeah, so it's Dango Thoughts, DANGO Thoughts. We meet here every single day, and we're discussing all kinds of things: science, religion, spirituality, God, whatever comes to mind, philosophy. But most of the time, people just kind of ask me questions about the experiment and stuff. And sometimes people come on and talk, and we have a discussion, and it's fun. So hope you'll stick around, Loki. Am I Jesus? Not that I know of. No. If we learn more about quantum, can we feed our brain into reach other dimensions? I think so. The short answer is yes, because the world is quantum. So the more we understand the quantum, the more we understand what's possible. So if there's parallel dimensions we can occupy, we can probably figure out if we can, and if so, how we can interact with them. I don't know if you know, but actually, to the question that's amazing. By the way, part of the plug, I'm also going to ask everybody on YouTube and X and Twitch if you can like the chat. It definitely helps the live. Same goes for TikTok. If you are enjoying yourself, if you can tap the screen a little bit, it will draw more people, and it helps the chat tremendously. I appreciate you. To the question of quantum computers, I don't know if you know this. That's amazing, but the way the quantum computers work is that they utilize the computational power of parallel universes, literally, to run the calculation altogether. That's why you can make these enormous calculations in like seconds. Have you tried drinking a molecule tea instead of smoking? Yep, I actually had that's a great question, Ben. I had a shaman in Central America. He did a whole ceremony with the laser as well, and it works. It also works on mushrooms, by the way. But you just need more of them. You need a lot. You need not a lot, but you need at least 3.5 grams to start seeing it, maybe. With the molecule, you see it right away. It's like ring, it's right there, and it's much more short-lived. Mushrooms are kind of a commitment. You're in for the ride, so it's much less convenient if you have things to do that day. How are you, Sean? Has the alphabet been recorded by hand? Yes, I had a few artists that drew it, and we're going to present it in the documentary, and even in the trailer you're going to see a version of what was transcribed. Transcribed is the wrong word, just recreated, just the shapes. What sounds scary, Markel? What's up, Grayson? Grayson 1 is in the house. Woo, jumped on me. I appreciate you, Grayson 1. Let me go back to Michelle. I'm just trying to go up the comments, guys, because it jumps on me all the time. I like you too, Grayson. Thank you. Whoa, there's a lot of comments. I love listening to you explain things. Appreciate you, Grayson. Whoa, there's a lot of comments. I'm trying to go back up, and apparently there was so many. Seeing the air between myself, anything. Yep, that's exactly it, Jess. You missed it all. I can't recap everything, Grayson, but we're going to keep talking, so. Damn, I want a handful of that hair so bad. That's funny, Kelly. Or just after it's rained and nice street lights refract light beams, you can watch it and see something. Yeah, I do think it's an ability that you can develop again, especially if you had it when you were a child. I would have to have a full toxicology report of that substance and its end product. Oh, well, Michelle, first of all, your body makes it. There is no toxicology. So your body makes it all the time. And we now know that for a fact. You can look at John Dean's Jon, oh my God, Jon Dean, Dean. He wrote a paper, I think 3 years ago or 5 years ago at this point, I don't remember. But one of his most big, you will see that it has probably the most kind of shares in publications. And he discovered that we used to think that we only have trace amounts of the molecule in the system at all times. And there was a hypothesis that maybe the body releases a lot of it right before you die, and this is why you have the NDE and whatever. But he discovered and he proved that, in fact, you have comparable amounts of the molecule. Again, I'm not naming it just because it's classified and they you know what I'm talking about, I'm sure. He discovered that there's comparable amounts of the molecule in your intracranial liquid to dopamine and serotonin on average throughout the day. So, and actually, I actually don't remember which one. You'll probably know. I don't remember the one. If serotonin is here and dopamine is here, I don't remember which one is higher. One of them is usually on average higher. But if serotonin is here and dopamine is here, you have right in between the amount of molecule on average in your intracranial liquid all the time, which means your body makes it all the time. It's actually buffering your experience on a regular basis. So, and he hypothesizes, this is something remains to be seen, obviously, but he hypothesizes that all hallucinations, they are perturbations to the dimethyltryptamine system. So even if you do other substances that make you see things, it's because they perturb that system. And if you think about it from a logical perspective of if it buffers your ability to construct some coherent image of what reality is, then when you smoke more of it, what happens is you put more fuel of what you're capable of perceiving. Even the elements of the larger world, the larger universe, that don't have direct correspondence to your reward functions. In other words, your DNA, your genes found the perfect middle of how much of each perception you need, so to speak, to survive in this exact three-dimensional or four-dimensional space-time, but three-dimensional in terms of physical functionality. And it basically only caters to you perceiving your reward functions. What do I need to know in order not to be eaten, and to eat on time, to sleep, to do all the things that my body needs to survive? That's it. So it dialed itself into that level. There might be a bubble of a lot of information right outside that for the most part is irrelevant to your reward functions, but it's real. It's real. You basically, your brain learned to ignore it because it's a waste of energy, and it doesn't actually influence most of what you need to physically survive. However, it is possible that when you start expanding that bubble, when your awareness starts growing back into that bubble, first you encounter all the things that seem to just be wild and insane because they're insignificant. They're not part of the world model that relates directly to your survival. So your brain doesn't have any world models to incorporate it into what's going on. There's no coherent way to fold it into the rest of your experience. It is very plausible to assume that if you allow your awareness to grow even more beyond a certain point, and there might be a big zone in the middle where it's irrelevant, when you go over a certain threshold into another space, all of a sudden there's a new space that becomes relevant to some kind of a higher function survival of the larger whatever you are as an informational pattern, right? And if you stay there long enough with your awareness, it will start creating world models that will propagate backwards and will fold it into the larger perception of the larger reality. Now, that will take some doing because you're gonna have to hold your state of awareness there long enough. And with this molecule, you can't really stay there long enough. Actually, it's like 5 to 10 minutes, right? But this is what they're actually trying to do in the Imperial College in London and now in San Diego, which is exactly that. They're slowly training people to stay there longer and longer. Right now, the longest they went, I think, was 40 minutes intravenously, extended state study. You can look it up. Imperial College in London. And eventually the goal is to keep people there for hours, then days, then weeks, maybe months. And the idea is, can you stay there long enough until and then obviously take care of your physicality. And then if we do that, is it possible that your mind, larger mind will learn how to actually assimilate these structures and create world models that make it coherent so you can actually interact with it just like you can interact with physical objects. I hope this was not, it sounds like you're medical professional and a lot of these things are not over your head. It sounds like you would understand what I'm talking about most of it. But if something was confusing, please let me know. So that's the proposition that is on the table, not by me, but by actual researchers that are already studying this. Somebody had to take some brilliant minds that care enough about this. Somebody had to put money in to make that happen. So people are taking this seriously. This is no longer some kind of a fringe, assumption. So, would you say the code can be seen by theoretically seeing invisible waves? I'm saying that you're seeing something in between the frames. I'm saying the code is always there. Your perception of reality on a regular basis, let's say it goes you can see where my brain is now, right? First frame, fifth frame, but there's other frames. And what I'm claiming is that the molecule allows you to see all the frames or more frames per second of reality, not just visually. So you start perceiving more of what in fact is going on. And that's what the laser is also somehow involved. It has something to do with the fact that it's coherent light. It has something to do with the fact that it's diffracted because you can't see it with the laser pointer. It's not going to work. So there's something about angling and there's something about interacting with the wave function because that's what diffraction achieves. So it's a lot, we won't know. There's too many speculations here. I think I know we're going to have to put a lot of actual experimentation underway to decide these things. My next step is to experiment with very powerful magnets to see if we can see something through the Zeeman effect. When you produce a powerful enough magnetic field around particular substances, and each substance has its own level of magnetic field that you need to exert around it to create the Zeeman effect. But the Zeeman effect is essentially a squeezing. Well, it's a heuristic to say squeezing, but it illustrates the point. It's a type of squeezing of the element, so you create suborbitals basically. And I want to see if we can actually see a change in the code that is replicable and agreeable by everybody who's seeing the code. And if we can have that, now you have another layer of confidence that you're looking at something truly real. Because not only that everybody's seeing the same thing, you now can do this one physical thing around it that everybody agrees is changing it in that particular way, which is already you're playing with a very different level of statistical confidence there. Realistically, you cannot state that an altered state of consciousness is an explanation of reality. Why not? I don't even know where to begin to rebuttal this point. It's just on the face wrong. Like, why can't I realistically state that an altered state of consciousness is an explanation of reality? By definition, your ability to perceive the world is just what you were dialed in at the moment because of where you happen to find yourself in. Oh, somebody was wanted to come on and then you canceled. I would love to bring you on. Was that you, Michelle? Let me see. I don't know how to bring you on. Would you like to come on and talk? That would be easier. By the way, so yeah, anybody is welcome to come and chat, but you have to give me a subject in the chat, so I know what we're about to talk about. So it's not like a random conversation. Do I believe in Yoda? Of course, baby. Yoda all the way. Spirit Molecule, I'm in San Diego. Yeah. So UC San Diego, John Dean. Look him up. Are you in UC San Diego? You are already living in an altered state. Well, it is the state, and then you alter it with all the other states. Is the code only visible under the specific spirit molecule? No, also under mushrooms and Aya, Mama Aya also. I absolutely believe it's real. I see something I've never been able to explain in refracting light. Interesting. Is dreamt proof we can live outside of time? And is dreams proof that we can live outside of time? And I'm not sure. Because I think time has to be viewed in terms of computational steps. Baseline non-medicated, what we would call fully alert oriented. Right, so I'm saying that is the false premise. I'm actually telling you that I see that as the false premise that prevents us from making progress. Because it's nowhere written that what you're dialed into right now is what is the state that perceives most of reality. In fact, we know for a fact that's not the case. We only know all the other things exist, like gamma rays and all the other parts of the spectrum that we can't see, because first, we have senses that perceive a portion of them. The reason we know that the electromagnetic field is a thing is because we have eyes that perceive it first. Then, by seeing it, we start playing with ideas as to what it can be an extension of, and then we come up with theories that we then test, and the ones that pan out, we build on top of, and then we make another hypothesis, and we make another test. And again, obviously I know you know all of this. I'm just kind of recapitulating just to present where we are in our mind's eye right now. And in the same way, it is very possible, and I would say that is in fact the case, that the channel that your brain is on right now, if you modify it in particular ways, not in all ways, but in particular ways, it can actually show you more information of what's going on, in a way that if you're going to keep insisting that your brain can't do it because you decided, not you as you, but the scientific community, if the scientific community decided that you have to measure things from baseline, non-medicated, where is it written that this is the state where you're supposed to perceive all of reality? Nowhere. It's a random decision that somebody made. And by the way, a book I would highly recommend is Reality Switch Technology by Dr. Andrew Gallimore. And in it, again, I don't know what your expertise is, but he basically kind of takes you to like some basic neuroscience. He's a computational neurobiologist, He takes you through some basic neuroscience, and then he explains all the different substances in terms of what happens in the brain and what we understand about what happens and why they do what they do. He goes through almost all of them, I think. Well, probably not all of them because it's going to be an infinite book, but through most of the major ones. And then he goes to the molecule and he explains why it is truly different in terms of what we understand about neuroscience and what the brain does. And yes, I've explained this quite a lot on this channel already, so but people that were here would know. But the general gist of what he's, the general reason that he puts forth as the main trumping card over the idea that this is a hallucination is because the brain never makes content. The brain is a very fabulous guessing machine. So what it means is that when the brain guesses something outwards, it has to be impinged by something real, whatever that means. This is already a very deep question, but whatever it is that is contriving the external environment that we see on the other side of it, and only what impinges on the senses through the guessing blanket of the brain inhibits these triangulation points, and that is the thing that makes the brain build world models responsible for presenting the next frame of what it thinks is happening. And because the brain has been around for a very long time, it's really good at presenting the three-dimensional environment. Most of what you see right now is the brain ignoring the senses, not allowing the information in. Only when whatever is happening outside disagrees with the brain, there's an air signal that goes up. I mean, the air signals always go up, but it goes up in frequency. And then the brain goes, whoa, 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 it's not what I thought is going to happen. Then it looks for adjacent world models that will match what might be going on. And when it finds that thing that works, it's like, okay, I can relax. And then it goes back to normal. And then it just, so everything you see right now is a projection from the inside, not what your senses are telling you. We know that for a fact. So now, in this context, the reason that the molecule is so different is that the departure from what you're seeing usually is not slight or variation of something that you already see. In other words, it's not a little bit of the edge detection that goes up, or colors kind of float free a little bit, which is the case in many other substances. With the molecule, everything you see here completely wiped clean, and you go to a completely different space with very complex and coherent structures that your brain has never seen before. They're of a different kind. There's no building blocks in this world that can build this. It's not of the same kind. So what we would have to explain in terms of what we understand about the brain is how can the brain all of a sudden produce all this extremely coherent and very elaborate whatever it is, world, and the brain never uses any extra information than what it actually needs. It would be very, very expensive and energetically, and it never had these building blocks. So you would have to explain how that happens, which is very different than what we understand. It's actually the opposite of what the brain be doing. So that's just on the neurological side of it. Aside from the fact that there's all these agreements between people, what they see in the space, how realistic the space feels, the feeling that it's actually one level up from the dream. So the same feeling you have when you wake up from the dream and now this is real life, you feel that one level up. So when you go up there, you're like, holy shit, okay, this was the dream. All of that you're experiencing. And if it would just be a few people that kind of like doing it off the cuff and like being confused, that's one thing. But now you have a lot of data on the subject. This is no longer kind of like some kind of a fringe thing anymore. Oh, there we go. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine. Thank you for, I guess, hosting me.
Oh, absolutely. It's a pleasure.
I guess I just wanted to put down here. I'm not bashing.
I don't feel that you're bashing. And by the way, I'm sorry I'm cutting you off, but I want you to know something about this particular chat. I'm kind of, I have this style of like whatever. So even if you're cutting me off, or even if as long as we're respectful, you can disagree, you can say it's all good. It all goes. Especially if you're a professional, that would be amazing to have this conversation.
Right. My medical profession, I'm a professional phlebotomist, so a lot of my profession is in blood and hearts and stuff that deals with blood, but my specialty is in toxicology and substances. I worked a long time with the DOT lab in San Diego, so specifically doing federal drug testing, and including, because I have read this paper by John Dean, I do know what substance you are referring to.
Okay.
I do happen to know that it is not a substance you should bring up in any context where there are potentially people watching to try to strike down something. And I don't fault you for that. What I do have to state about this particular molecule is that, like with marijuana, like with mushrooms, like with fentanyl or heroin, it does have an effect on the mind that is, when I say altered state of consciousness, it changes the base structure of the mind to allow for different neuron capacity, for different pathways in the brain to flow and connect. And that's beautiful. It can work very well in therapy for PTSD, for severe depression. There's a lot of research. I would love to see, honestly, the US needs to get off its butt and fund more research into substances that they've just deemed gateways to hell. But I think the worry here, when I say that the baseline state of consciousness, in science, if you can't state a baseline, you have no control. Like, you don't have a control group that you can base any actual data off of. Everyone's at different points.
Yeah, we agree on that in overall, yes.
Yeah, no two people are going to have the exact same brain. We're not wired that way, completely.
Right.
However, there are some things you can control. You can make sure everyone's within a range of blood pressure. You can control whether some people are taking certain medications. It's important in trials to make sure you have as many consistencies as possible. It would be important in this research that I would absolutely fully love to see more research go into, a bit more scientific basis and a little less group bias, I guess, is the worry that I have here. The idea that we all had this exact same experience, and we can all say this because we all took this substance and our reality is well documented. It would be hard for me to say that the experience that you went through could be easily achievable by any other person.
You have over 1,000 replications worldwide.
Certainly, but there are 8 billion people on Earth. Again.
Right, so you have to start somewhere, but it is unheard of that you can replicate something 100% of the time in that space.
Absolutely.
But you can with what I found.
You're
100% of the time.
100% of the time. I could walk in to UCSD or wherever this is based. I could potentially take this substance and have the exact same results as everyone else in this group has had.
No, under what? So you're talking about two separate things. I'm not talking about the study that the protocols they now have in place in San Diego that they're working on. I'm talking about what I personally discovered that they now know about, but it's going to take a little while before you enter that into the protocols to actually try and test for it. Obviously, it's going to have to go through double blinds and everything else around it. But let's just separate and understand we're talking about two different things. What I found, what I'm claiming to have found, is 100% replicable, which is unheard of, which is the only thing that has this quality are physical objects. There's nothing else that has that. Anything that has to do with perception, and which is the thing you're pointing out, will always have some kind of variation. So now, right, this does not. This is what actually makes it so unique.
No, that's actually, that is actually rather interesting, because you're correct. There's the argument with a substance a lot of people know as iron pyrite, fool's gold, that is notable for being able to make perfect cubes, and the argument is nothing in nature makes perfect cubes. However, that is the lattice structure of iron pyrite. So that is what it makes. Its crystalline structure is perfect cube, which shouldn't be possible in a nature as chaotic as it is. So,
oh, not necessarily because of that. I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off. It has more to do with the fact that the cube is not an optimizing shape of any kind. So, for example, hexagonal shapes are optimizations of bubbles, right? When they arrange themselves together. So you can claim that this is why hexagonal structures are actually not that weird, even though they're very pretty, because there's some geometrical optimization of a system that exists in a 2 or 3 dimensional space. But with cubes, it's extra weird because it's not an optimization system, optimization shape. So I would say that would be the main reason as to why. But I see what you're saying. If the shape of the structure is that, it would make sense that it would present itself as itself, because that's what comes about.
absolutely.
Yeah. So just to give you a little bit of background, first of all, I really appreciate you coming on, really. And I just want to let you know that this is not going to happen tomorrow. But I assure you that so the reason that I came out with it originally, this was already after 2 years of basically testing it kind of like by myself. And only when I was absolutely certain that what was going on was very substantial is when the first step wasn't to talk about it on social media. The first step was actually try to reach out to some known scientists that I knew would probably have a little bit of an open mind, even though they're kind of like, held in high positions. So Donald Hoffman, I reached out to him. I tried to speak to Gary Aldman, I think his name is. So they're respectable scientists, but they're a little bit more kind of like they're open-minded about certain things, and they study them from a more open-minded perspective. So I try to email, but even there, like take yourself through typing that email. It's like, hey, I discovered we live in a simulation. What do you say, right? So I did that though. They actually responded. It was very nice. But I very quickly realized that unless I'm putting more emphasis on it from like a perspective of like, okay, look, there's numbers involved of like people just doing the same. And when I saw myself that over 100 people saw the exact same thing and by the way, I ran it in all kinds of ways. So one way I didn't tell them anything and they still saw the exact same thing. Another way, as I told them something else on purpose to kind of throw off their sense. And they came back and say, well, I didn't say that thing you told me, but I did see these weird Japanese katakana looking things. So like they always said the same thing, right? But it wasn't even that. In the specifics of the way that it's done is the thing that delivers the point. When you go into these spaces, there's obviously gradation as to how far you can go. From, microdosing where you barely feel anything, if nothing at all, to like you're full on flailing on a bed. You're not even, there's no coherence of any kind. You're just like, you're babbling, right? Where we're hovering with this experiment is you're completely here. You're not, messed up. You're not like out there in hyperspace. None of that. You're just here. It's literally like putting 3D glasses on. And what I was saying before, that rant that I went about objectness, this is actually a term that I only discovered later in Anil Seth's book, Being You, which is a great book, by the way. But my original video, I'll share it with you after this live. It's a video that I put out on YouTube originally. That's the one that kind of got me some attention from some scientists and some people are actually funding this research. And I called it epistemologically sound because I couldn't think of a term. And what I wanted to describe there is that by seeing this, I realized that we have one flawed element in our scientific thinking when we think about what's real. Because what we're controlling for in double blinds is bias, but what is not taken into account is the bias of the physicalist frame. And I'm all for the physicalist frame. I think it's very useful and it's very important for all practical matters, including especially the ones that have to do with engineering and just, we got to make things work. So even if you have some higher concepts that have to do with some, things that we might interact with in 100 years from now, for now, it is useful to think of the world as physical because it helps us build things and understand things. So I'm all for it. However, I started realizing that what we're seeing there belongs to a family of observations that we actually don't have a word for it because we take it for granted. Specifically, what I mean is that this confusion element, it exists in different people to different degrees, right? So like there's some people that are just more, I guess, straightforward. They don't tend to confabulate. They're just straight shooters. They're just like that. That's their psychology. Mm-hmm. Some people are very extravagant. They like to exaggerate. It's part of their personality. That's fine. So because you don't know who's who, even if you're testing them psychologically, it's easier to just control for them not having the information instead of guessing how that information might be rendered by that particular person or that particular person. That's really what we're controlling for, right? And then, by the way, this is why the double blind, because we also control for the bias in the person who's giving you whatever it is. If they know, they might make a face or, the second they have the information, you already have some kind of a tainted situation, right? But what is not being taken into account that at least to a certain degree of observation, not to an ultimate degree, because if, for science to take this on board as a truth, obviously it's going to have to go through all the necessary channels that science has to throw at it. I'm in full agreement with that. But up to a certain point, we can exchange notes, so to speak, because you need that little buffer in the middle to see. At the moment, I don't know what continuum we're looking at, so I don't know how to build a device that will present this to you without taking the substance. But I know for a fact that we will get there. The second we start understanding what is truly happening here, why are we seeing this when we're doing all this combination, I know we'll be able to build some kind of a device that will present it to us without taking the substance. We just need to understand exactly what continuum we're searching along, right? So what I wanted to say about the bias of the physicalist perspective is when you're walking in the middle of the night and you're seeing it, let's say it's like right when the light starts going low enough where you don't quite switch to your black and white cones, but so like not in the dark, right? But you're still kind of like in between, and things get confusing. If you see some kind of a tree or a bush from a certain distance, and you're not sure if it's a person or not, let's say, you're kind of worried that it might be somebody who's trying to mug you or something, so there's like an emotional worry there. If you would ask yourself in that moment, do I know that it's a person or a tree? You don't, but you're aware of the fact that you're confused. Like if you would actually have to like answer that question in a questionnaire, you would say, yeah, I didn't know. But there's a certain level of confidence when there's enough light. You would never confuse the tree from a certain distance for a person and vice versa. So there is a line of confidence that you can cross and you say, no, I know for a fact it's a person and I know for a fact it's a tree. There is this state of non-confusion, right? And this matters because when you see what I'm telling you about, there's no confusion. Zero confusion. It's just like, oh, it's there. Like it's real, it's behaving like a real thing. You move the light, it's not moving. You would think that because there's a stochastic pattern on the wall or whatever it is you're projecting the light on, and because you're on this like very psychedelic substance, obviously you can postulate that maybe something is happening here where it is common for these substances to utilize stochastic patterns to create some kind of, all kinds of extravagant things. But it's not happening. So it's not like when you move the light, the whatever you're seeing is moving with the light. It's not. It's inside the surface. It's like putting a flashlight on something in the dark, straight up. and it's like it's continuous into infinity inside, and it exhibits behavior and spatial coherence in a way that can your brain do it? Maybe, sure, but it would take it so much computing power that it's inconceivable, because it would have to render everything you're saying, which is a lot, and it would have to maintain its position in space in relationship to you in the exact same way it would have to do it with like a physical object. But with a physical object, it doesn't have to do that because the physical thing is there. So all it has to do is to correct its own coordinates in relationship to it. If it's a hallucination, now you have a two-body problem. You have to coordinate your own perception of that thing. And if the mind is giving rise to that hallucination, it also has to keep track where it was and now maintain it in that particular place in space. That's amount of energy that the brain doesn't just willy-nilly exert for no reason. Especially if you're in a confused state, the brain would just go into some kind of a, this is why I'm saying that up to a certain level, it makes sense what you're saying. Beyond a certain level, it doesn't make any sense. When it's too coherent for too long, across too many individuals and times, and I'm telling you it's 100% of the time, that's unheard of. You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
And I've been thinking kind of offhand, it's like, what could you possibly do then in confident study to be able to get non-confused an absolute answer on people perceiving something through the laser experiment there, because you can't just have like what people do with hearing tests, the button input. When you hear the sound, you press the button so you can test hearing. You can't do something like 1 or 2 with vision tests, because
oh no, you can. You're completely coherent. You're not
right. No, you're completely coherent.
Yeah.
But the what am I trying to say here? This is really difficult, and it's taking.
I'm very open, and I'm very interested. So if you have the time, please take your time and explain.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And it's like 2:30 here, so I'm.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm totally fine. I'm a night owl.
Oh wait, it's a 2:30 for me too. I am in California, so.
Oh hey, like I said, I'm in San Diego, so.
Right. Okay.
So it's hi neighbor.
Hello.
So, if you like, for instance, for sleep studies, EEG, 24 lead, brain cap, and you're mapping energy levels coming through at certain points, plus button mapping on stimulus, like they are perceiving something, plus there's activity in the brain, you then have a bit more of a focused, yes, someone is perceiving something, they are not confused about it, and we have activity showing it. We can be 100% determinant there is something there, and it's perceived, and the person is not confused that it's there.
So you can because you can measure the two states of, what the state of the brain would be if it would be confused, and you would know what the state of the brain would be if it's not confused, plus whatever you see in the actual visual cortex as in new information appeared or something.
Yes, absolutely. Because when new information arises, even if it's just like a sudden change in light, you will have a millisecond of electrical activity that changes in the brain. So it could be very lightly perceived, but you can't lie what your brain shows. Therefore, even if someone's brain blips and they don't press the button to show that they see something or don't see something, you can perceive that something is happening.
Right. So let me ask you this. So there's this guy who I've only recently heard about. Somebody told me about him. His name is Tom Matte, Matte. Mm-hmm. He had an interesting story. It's a long story. We're not going to get through it right now. But he went through, basically, he had a mental breakdown like about 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. And he went through a whole thing where, he had a respectable job. He was in advertisement, if I remember correctly. He kind of basically drifted away from both the job and his family and everything. It was a very painful experience of his life. Part of it was also like he became homeless for a while. Luckily, he had enough people in his life who were kind of like very loving, and he managed to kind of rehabilitate himself. One of the reasons that he was definitely using like all kinds of things. Like we're not talking about like just, he wasn't doing it in like a shamanic way. Like he was definitely out of control. But when it was all said and done, there was an ability that stayed with him that he knew was not part of his delusions. Like he just knew that this is real. But now, go and explain to people after you basically destroyed your reputation that no, this one thing is real. Like, okay, good luck with that. So he realized that he has to first of all show everybody that he cleans himself up. He's a person that can be trusted. And then now he's a public speaker. He talks about this thing he calls upsight. Here's the interesting part. About 2 months after I built the laser and started talking about it publicly, something happened to me that sounds very similar to what he's describing, but I never spoke about it in the beginning because I knew that one person's account of something, even if it's very realistic to them, doesn't really hold water in any way, nor should it, right? Because who knows? Maybe I have a disorder. Maybe it's some kind of a some kind of not a psychotic break, but like, what is it when you see hallucinations? What is it called? Schizophrenia, right? Maybe it's a schizophrenic break or something, right? It didn't feel like one because I felt completely normal. But I never thought that this should be important because people say all kinds of things. Who knows, right? I knew the laser I can prove because I can just show you. You can hear it, do it, see it, and everybody were blown away every single time. But what's interesting is that, so what happened was, and eventually I put out a video talking about it because a lot of people asked me. And only recently I discovered that there's a couple more people that I met online that sees a very similar thing. And I know that because they told me things before I released my video, luckily. Otherwise I wouldn't know if they just saw my video and just parroting what they saw in the video. But that guy is, I guess he's a known kind of like, free agent, known about that thing that he was talking about for years before I even made my discovery. So I know he's seeing it. And Dean Radin, from what he's saying, Dean Radin now took him on board to try and verify exactly what's going on there. And everything you're describing sounds like you would be a really good person to bounce it off of because you might suggest a good way to triangulate this. So what happened was I smoked the molecule like I do, well, not anymore so much right now because I have a very busy life now, but I used to do it all the time. And I smoked the thing, and my fiance, she was standing right next to me, and an object appeared in my room. Now, I'm not talking about like I know the space very well. I've done it so many times that I know the space through and through. This does not happen on the molecule. So like it's just an object that appeared in the room. It was like an egg-shaped thing, and it started unfolding. It's like opening like a flower, and then literally like imagine like Tony Stark level augmented reality screens and everything just came right in front of me. So needless to say, I was just flabbergasted. I was just like, and she asked me like, "What's going on?" I'm like, 1 second, I gotta look at this," and then I call it the console. It's straight up like a computer. It just opens up and it just hovers in front of me, and it sits there. And I can activate it by different gestures of my attention. I don't want to get too deeply right now into like the specifics because I want to give you the full arc of the thing so you can comment on it. If you're interested in later, I can give you details, but right now I just want to finish giving you the full thing. And then basically it's just always there. And now every time I smoke it, 100% of the time it appears. It looks exactly the same, just like you would open like the same thing. You would boot the same system. It like looks like that, and it has all kinds of menus and things like that. Eventually, I put out a video that I talked about it, and I even worked with a 3D artist to help me reconstruct some of the rudimentary version of what I'm saying. And what I found interesting, which is what you were saying just now, is the thing that made me think of it. because when I saw Tom Matt talk about his thing, he calls it Upsight, and it sounds exactly like what I'm seeing with the console. He just calls it Upsight. He can see like menus, he can see like all kinds of things, and they're very realistic. They're in space. You can see them just like you can see augmented reality. And the way that one of the ways that he said that Dean Radin is helping him triangulate it, and I never thought about that, is that he says that eye tracking behaves very specifically when you're actually tracking an object versus when you're just moving your eyes through the air. So when you move your eyes through the air, they always do the jump. But if you're actually tracking a real object, they can stay like a glide. Like your eyes can actually stay with the object. So this is one of the tricks they're using to see if the thing that he's seeing is actually there for his brain, at least, to see if they can do anything else with it. My question to you, first of all, is that true about the eye tracking? Second of all, is there a way that you can think of with either EEG or some other device that shows the state of the brain on an external screen that this kind of phenomena can potentially be triangulated as, for the person, is what they're experiencing is quote unquote real, or at least substantial enough to like be really in space, or this is at the moment with the technologies that we have is an intractable problem? What do you think?
That's a very interesting question. So to the first one, yes, that is true. If someone asks you to track something with your eyes will do the jumping across while it's trying to track the thing, because you are mentally trying to focus on tracking and not panning. If you are just watching something and you are not focused on trying to pan with your eyes, the muscles in your eyes will just let your eye pan smoothly across. And eye tracking technology does show the difference between a jittering tracking eye and a panning smooth watching eye. So that is true. Whether or not that could assist with determining if something that is perceived is real, that would be very difficult. I don't know enough. I will fully admit that I do not know enough about the connections between the optic nerve and the brain to fully say that there is something there. I will say that it sounds plausible because people who have had, I do know this because I have a friend who has unfortunately had eye cancer and had one of their eyes removed fully. Someone who has both eyes functioning and looks at an image will have a very bright certain part of their visual cortex light up. Someone who has had the one eye removed, it turns out, only has half, literally one half of their visual cortex light up.
Interesting. So literally half of the visual cortex is responsible for one eye and half responsible for the other, basically.
Exactly, because you use the information from both optic nerves to build the image in your mind, remembering that we see everything flipped because our optic nerves perceive all the light information. It puts it on our retina upside down, and then our brains literally flip that image back right side up so that we don't literally perceive an upside down world, because that would be
fun.
Disgusting.
That would be too fun.
Unfortunately, yeah, there are some people who have conditions where their brain does not flip that image right side up, and they live with debilitating proprioception issues.
And also mostly black and white, right?
And mostly in black and white, because a lot of times they are also missing their chromocones.
Yeah.
So, or if they're not missing their chromocones, they are literally not able to derive the information through their optic nerves that is responsible for color.
Okay.
So, it would be strong evidence that there may be enough information traveling along that highway to accept something as perceived real versus not perceived real. I just wouldn't know how to do it.
Yeah, I always say, people say, can you transcribe it? I'm like, yeah, no. There's literally millions of characters moving so fast. I mean, you coherently you can see them, but you drown in information. There's no way you can, even make. I always say that I think the only time where we're gonna start playing with like real, like, I don't know, trying to play with like finding patterns and stuff like that. That's only when you're gonna have some kind of a very advanced version of Neuralink or something comparable that can just record directly from the cortex, from the prefrontal cortex, and then you can potentially like feed it directly into some kind of an AI that can maybe find patterns. And also, by the way, that would actually really help with, like proving it, because if you can project literally somebody's visual field onto a screen for everybody to see, you can actually see what's really going on. That alone should do a lot of the heavy lifting there.
You just reminded me of something.
Sure.
Actually, by saying that, we can do that because I have seen it.
I know they have something very rudimentary, but from what I saw, it's like very pixelated. It's not.
It
I
is
mean,
incredibly pixelated because basically the waves that we receive are so low in frequency when we try to derive them back into CRT, which is the only way we know how to do it right now. The image is grainy. It's like more pixels, please, but it's coherent enough that we could say, yeah, that looks like a tree in a field, probably somewhere, where a person is seeing a very clear, crisp, oh my gosh, that's 4K, 8K image we can't perceive in 4K, but yeah, let's say it is. But I do remember we can turn brain waves back into images. We are just not very good at it yet. I love living in this current time where we are learning so much about how to do these sort of things, but I really think that we are on the cusp of learning how to actually do what you say we should probably be able to do to make this research. You're honestly really exciting me about this, and I didn't think I was going to be here, but here we are.
well, I'm glad. That's a big compliment. So yeah, if you would do me a favor also, if you can just, because there's a lot of, I see your name, and I don't know, does it allow me to? No, for some reason it doesn't allow me to follow you directly from here. So if you can shoot me a DM, just so I have your profile, so I can stay in contact with you, because it sounds like you might have a lot of very valuable things to say, because my goal is to come up with the most robust and truly, like as scientifically as possible as I can do it myself before they put it into some kind of a more rigorous study in a university. But and one of the things that I'm interested in more than anything, because people always ask me, especially in these chats, and I can understand it because people like, when things are related to them, and I don't fault them for that. It's understandable. To me, I'm interested in understanding the world. I think this is just another thing that we just discovered about the world. Some people would disagree, that's fine. But I'm less interested in actually proving that we can, gain superpowers or, read the thing. I want to see if we can create. I'm coming at it a little bit more from the physics perspective. I feel maybe the wrong word. There's a strong intuition because of what I do understand about light and about magnetism. I do think that the code that we see, I don't know if it's space-time, but it's definitely one of the tapestries that we have access to experientially, to actually see something that codes for some of the functions we see as physical matter. Now, I know that the claim is extremely extravagant and out there, but one of the ways that I want to test this is I want to see if I can, I mentioned this already when you were already on the chat, so you probably heard me say this, but I want to see if I want to do something with the Zeeman effect. I found this device. Usually, I have a few friends who are physicists, and one of them in England said that they have something that makes like 3.4 Teslas, but it's like a giant thing, and they have to cool it down for 2 days, and that whole rigmarole. I found this device that I'm not really sure how it can be this cheap, but it's $15,000 versus like $150,000, and it's supposed to be like a little thing you can just roll in a room. It's an electromagnet, and it claims to be able to produce 3.5 Teslas. Now, if it works, I think I have a very strong intuition that there's going to be something there. The only thing that I've seen that does anything else to the code than, so no matter where you project the laser, including your skin, you see the same thing, the same numbers running around with the same pattern. The only thing I try to project it through all kinds of materials. The same physicist friend sent me, I wanted to play with some materials that are more opaque, so I try to play with bismuth because of its special relationship to magnetism.
Mm-hmm.
And he sent me this like 10 nanometer scale filament of bismuth, so I can project the laser through it. Nothing happened, but I did notice that when I use magnets, it does seem to scramble it, which is interesting because I've never seen that before. Now, if I want to be absolutely certain, I also have to correct for the specific material that the magnet is actually made out of, because it's possible that maybe some of the rigidity of the actual surface of the magnet might be responsible for this kind of like what seems to be scrambling.
Right.
But and I won't know until I test like all kinds of things. But something really tells me that with a powerful enough of a magnet, by creating the Zeeman effect, I think we can see a coherent change to the code in a way that everybody that can see it would agree that they see that exact change, either in behavior, maybe even, I don't know if the digits will, I don't know. But it's a long story why I'm convinced of this, but I'm pretty sure. So I would be focused on that part, while I know that, so John knows about this. He's pretty open-minded, but the way it works is, it's because when they get the grant, they kind of have to follow the protocol that they submitted. They can't really change it too much.
Right.
But I know that in the future, I was also in contact with some of the people in Imperial College. Two of them, I cannot name who, saw the code, and so I know eventually it's going to find its way to the lab, and the right people will take care of the whole, actually finding out how we triangulate that part. But I'm really interested to play with the physical element of it to see if we can actually see physical changes occur in a way that we can see like the coherent change to the code, and then starting to build a map of like, okay, when the code does this, when a certain amount of magnetism is present around the diode, that's what happens to the code. When we move the magnet this way, that's what happens to the code. If I can do that, it's a big if, obviously, but if I can do that, now I always say you have a new layer of confidence on top of just not everybody observing the same thing. Now you have another layer of confidence that you creating a physical perturbation around it that is agreed upon by everybody causes the same kind of change. So that's more of my focus now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you have a really strong basis for where this could head, and I'm interested in following along.
Amazing. Where can I find you?
I've been following you, and I did a little bell thing, but I'll make sure to send you a message.
Yeah,
I'm
please
sorry
send me
you can't follow me back right now. You're in a live, so
Yeah, that's maybe why. No, I would love to follow up with you. I'm so happy that you came on. You're exactly the kind of people that I'm looking for, because I need this to be as down to earth as wild as the claim is. I need it to be as down to earth as possible in terms of how we can test for this. So I really appreciate that you came on.
No, absolutely, and I'm really grateful to be able to present maybe some of the questions that would come forward to test what you're saying, not as an attacking kind of point, but also just, hey, these are the kind of things you're going to be asked. What are you going to say in response? And kind of build up that I know what I'm saying, and here's my backup. And it's good to have that.
Oh, absolutely. No, I already have. Listen, it's it's not. I have some experts who disagree with me, like experts in the field, and
Yes,
I understand the. But I always say the same thing. All the people that do disagree never tried it.
right, exactly.
So
And it's
so I was
probably just
like,
going to be
listen,
that
you
way.
go try it, and then if you still disagree, I would love to hear it. But
And maybe, just kind of more personal on me, even though I'm a medical professional, I've struggled with PTSD. I have used marijuana. I've used mushrooms myself when I was a teenager. That was stupid. Um,
not the right time. Yeah, I
I
know.
drowned in the carpet. It was a great time. Um,
Well, I know MDMA is very effective with PTSD, right?
so it's one that I've wanted to try, and it's been on a few studies around in the area, but for whatever reason, because of my comorbidities, it's not something that's ever offered to me.
Yeah,
Um,
it does. It makes it a little dodgy on the heart for sure. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And because I've already had psychotic breaks, it's also one of those things where you don't want to give it to someone who's already had
yeah.
a large psychosis event.
Oh, definitely.
So I guess in sorry. So I guess in that vein, uh, I'm coming from it with a really open standpoint, even though I'm a very scientifically minded person.
I am too.
Yeah, exactly. I can
Yeah,
see that.
yeah,
I will have to say, I think I'm gonna have to jump off.
yeah. I
I think I'm
also have to
looking at
jump
myself.
off.
I'm petering out, man.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for taking you. Thank you so much for taking the time and the energy that you spent here with us today. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
Thanks to everyone who said nice things and questions in the chat, and have a good one.
Good night. Okay, that was wonderful. And yeah, I'm welcoming more of these conversations. This is going to be amazing. And yeah, for me, it's also 3 a.m. Unfortunately, I know that there's like a million things that you guys asked, but I do have actually an early start tomorrow. So I hope that I'm not gonna make too many people mad. Let's see if there's anything that I can take like real quick. To all the people that just joined, uh, so I'm just gonna give you a quick recap. This channel usually revolves around the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I'm claiming to have found actual proof that we live in a simulation. This was the discussion right now with a medical professional that she had some, uh, you know, things she wanted to bring up as potential rebuttals to what I'm saying, and was the discussion. But basically, a few years ago, I discovered that if you project a diffracted laser on a surface and you ingest a particular molecule that we cannot name here, you will see code running in surfaces. One thing that I might want to start adding, and I think it is important, and I wasn't adding it, and I think I do say it sometimes by passing, but I do want to mention this. It is definitely not for everybody. It's just kind of like going to space. It's not something that everybody should try to do. I was putting out originally the message to more of the people that are already doing this kind of stuff, and I told them, hey, if you try this other thing with it, you will see this code. And we now have over 1,000 replications worldwide. But we meet here every single day and we discuss all kinds of things, including science, religion, spirituality, philosophy, God, whatever comes to mind. So everybody are welcome. You can follow my YouTube channel, Dango Thoughts, by following the link tree in my channel. The videos there are longer than the ones you see here on TikTok, so they do have the same the version that you see here on TikTok. I have longer videos with more explanation, with more information if you're interested. Again, it's Dango Thoughts, DANGO Thoughts. What else? My X is Goler Danny, and my Twitch is Laser. I don't even remember because it's new. Laser X83. But YouTube would be the next big channel. I'm here every day. Usually this is not my hour. I usually go up at about 6 p.m. Pacific time. If you enjoyed this and you would like to join, please come down. Let me see if there's any question that I can answer quickly. Oh, there's a lot of information. Okay. Apologies, guys. My brain is fading. But deep love to everybody. I hope to see you tomorrow. Also, I'm a transgender male. So no she, her pronouns, please. Okay, and it says them. Sure thing, Michelle. So them. So you're comfortable with them, right? So I say when they came on, would that be correct? Okay, I think they are offline. Well, in any case, thank you so much, Michelle. I'm most comfortable with they, them. Okay, perfect. Okay. And thank you so much, Michelle, for your time. That was very enlightening and very refreshing to have this conversation. I always appreciate a conversation of this flavor. And yeah, see everybody tomorrow. Peace and love to everybody. Ciao. See everybody on Twitch. Oh, if you guys can all like the live, that would be wonderful on YouTube and X and Twitch if you're there. And I see Sean says Musk said he likes the Neuralink could quite potentially produce molecule-like experiences. Yeah, I saw that, and I don't see any reason why not. I think it really is going to change the world. Thank you so much, Nick, D'Angelo, Confused Dolphin. Thank you, everybody. That was really good. Hope you enjoyed it. See you tomorrow. Ciao.